With the recent announcement of GameCube games coming to the Switch Online for Switch 2, today we will be looking at two classic Pokemon gems, Pokémon Colosseum and Pokémon XD Gale of Darkness, that both released on the Nintendo GameCube in the early 2000s. These games offered a Pokemon adventure that we are all familiar with, but instead had visuals very reminiscent of the Pokemon Stadium games on the Nintendo 64. What came from this blend of ideas was something really special in my opinion. The engaging story, new battle mechanics, animations, level structure, and music are some of the best that Pokemon has ever done at this point in my opinion. And so, we're going to talk about these 5 things I think the Orre games got right. Let's begin. The story in Pokémon Colosseum is a huge departure from the traditional get your 8 badges and defeat the Elite Four formula of the mainline Pokemon games, offering a darker and more narrative-driven experience. Set in the arid, lawless Orre region, this game's story centers around Shadow Pokemon. Shadow Pokemon are Pokemon that had the doors to their hearts shut artificially by an evil team called Cypher. These Pokemon are stronger than regular ones and come with unique abilities. Cypher's goal was to basically create as many Shadow Pokemon as possible to be the strongest power in the world. To help with their goals, Cypher enlisted the help of Team Snag'em, a criminal organization of thieves. It was their job to steal Pokemon from trainers that would later be transformed by Cypher into Shadow Pokemon. This doesn't fly with the main character of the story, Wes, a former Team Snag'em member who takes matters into his own hands and steals one of the snag machines, the exact tools used to steal Pokemon. He makes it his mission to stop this misguided plan once and for all. Along the way, he finds Rui, a girl with the unique and convenient ability to see the aura of Shadow Pokemon, because the normal human eye can't tell the difference otherwise. They team up to snag all the Shadow Pokemon away from the baddies and purify them so they can return to normal. These two would go on to inspire others to fight the good fight when the evil Team Cypher would carry out their evil deeds once again in the second game. Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness continues the darker, more narrative-driven approach introduced in Pokemon Colosseum, expanding on the concept of Shadow Pokemon and the sinister forces behind them. Set 5 years after the events of its predecessor, the game follows a new protagonist, a young trainer named Michael, who takes on the mission of stopping the revived Cypher organization. Cypher has developed a new, more dangerous generation of Shadow Pokemon, including the formidable Shadow Lugia, known as XD001. As Michael works with the Pokemon HQ lab to develop the snag machine and purify corrupted Pokemon, he uncovers a plot that threatens the entire Orre region. With its deeper story, returning characters, and continued emphasis on rescuing and redeeming Pokemon twisted by evil, Gale of Darkness builds on the foundation of Colosseum while delivering a compelling, more emotionally engaging Pokemon adventure. Having your family be part of the story gave you something to fight for. What I like about the story in these games is that you sort of take up the role of an anti-hero in a sense. You steal the bad guys' tech to steal back from the bad guys in order to save the Pokemon. I think this is the most badass a Pokemon story has ever gotten, and it really stands out in my opinion. We always play as a pure-hearted do-gooder, but in these games, we aren't above saving the world using less than good means. I do like the plot twist at the end of the first game, and it was very surprising to me at least, but the second game lacked the shock factor for me. Like, you kind of know who the bad guy is from the very start. I still enjoyed the story from the second game, but the first one was better in my opinion. What do you guys think? If you played these games, did you like the story? The main feature and selling point of this game I truly believe are the double battles. I've said this in videos before, but double battles are where Pokemon really shines, and it's done really well here. Double battles really push you to work on team dynamics, more so than you would in single battles, and it's really fun for what you have to work with. This format adds a deeper layer of tactical complexity, as players must consider type matchups, move synergy, and positioning for both allies and enemies simultaneously. Moves that affect multiple targets, abilities that support a partner, and status effects become more significant in battle planning. The consistent use of double battles reinforces the game's unique identity and challenges players to think more strategically than in the standard Pokemon formula. Your options are limited as far as available Pokemon and moves, which provided a tough challenge overall, but I gotta admit, I wish I still had more choices. I would have loved to use more Hoenn Pokemon during the main story, but looking back, I realized this was the only way to get some Johto Pokemon into your Gen 3 games back in the day. You could also bring your teams from the GBA games after you beat the game, Colosseum and Gale of Darkness, which was cool, but honestly, it would have been awesome to just blow through the game with my high-level Pokemon, just one time. The post-game and other battle modes of the game had really challenging battles, even if you did bring your GBA teams, which was pretty cool. Something I have to mention that did get to me sometimes was how slow the game felt. I'm not talking about Wes's walking animation, which is pretty slow, yeah, but it didn't really bother me too much, and it appears to have been sped up in the second game anyway. I'm talking about the battles themselves. The battle starts with the camera zoomed in on the opponent, then zooms out so you and the opponent are in view. Opponent throws Pokeballs, first Pokemon is released, second Pokemon is released, camera zooms out again, Wes throws Pokeballs, first Pokemon is released, second Pokemon is released, and then you can actually start battling. Once both sides declare their attacks, you have to wait for all the animations to finish before the next animation to start. For important fights, this can be very cinematic and immersive for sure, but after a while it started to get to me, especially when you're grinding levels. Now I've heard people say that you could just turn off animations to speed things up, but to me that doesn't really solve the issue, like putting black tape on a broken pipe. Plus it also defeats the purpose of playing a 3D game in the first place, right? You want to see all those animations in their full glory. If the animations were just a little shorter and we had less of the camera going on an acid trip, battles would be much more smooth and enjoyable in my opinion. But I get that the experience needs to feel like you're watching a battle in the anime, and 3D Pokemon games till this day still have this issue to a degree, but I think one day we'll have a perfect balance. If it were up to me, when a battle starts, just have an overview shot of all 4 Pokemon being sent out at once, and just start the battle from there. Speed up some animations and that's it. In fact, just keep the overview shot for the entire battle, and have the camera zoom-ins controlled by the player, should they choose to use it. But I get that may not work for everyone, which is why I think it should at least be an option. What do you guys think about double battles? Specifically 3D double battles. Did you enjoy them? Did you hate them? What are some ways you think they could be improved? Speaking of animations, the animations in Pokémon Colosseum were a notable leap forward for the series at the time of its release on the Nintendo GameCube. Unlike the sprite-based battles of earlier titles, Colosseum featured fully 3D rendered Pokémon with dynamic battle animations that brought attacks and abilities to life in a more cinematic fashion. Each move had a distinct visual effect, from the glowing charge of Thunderbolt to the fiery burst of Fire Blast, enhancing the intensity and strategy of battles. The game also paid attention to detail in Pokemon reactions, with flinching, fainting, and celebratory animations that added personality to each creature. I really like how they show Zigzagoon moves in a zigzag motion, or how they kept Umbreon's stripes glowing like they did in Pokemon Stadium 2. While some movements could feel stiff or repetitive by modern standards, Colosseum set a precedent for how 3D battle presentation could deepen immersion in the Pokemon universe. In Gale of Darkness, the game improves on its predecessor by making animations smoother and more expressive, contributing to a more polished overall presentation. These animations, combined with dramatic camera angles and environmental detail, help create a more immersive and engaging experience that set a new standard for Pokemon battles on home consoles. Not for nothing, but we do gotta mention, like, why are some of these animations better than what we would see in Scarlet and Violet or Sword and Shield? I'm just saying, Game Freak. Anyway, I digress. What do you guys think about the animations? Did you like them in Colosseum and Gale of Darkness? Would you like to see these types of animations in modern Pokemon games, or are you already happy with what we got? Let me know in the comments down below. The music in Pokémon Colosseum plays a crucial role in shaping the game's unique atmosphere, distinguishing it from other titles in the Pokémon franchise. Composed by Tsukasa Tawada, the soundtrack combines orchestral elements with electronic and rock influences to match the game's edgier, more mature tone. From the hauntingly ambient tracks of the desolate Orre region to the high-energy battle themes, the music enhances the sense of urgency and mystery that defines the narrative. Standout tracks like the Cypher Admin battle themes are particularly memorable, featuring intense rhythms and dynamic instrumentation that reflect the high stakes of the confrontations. Here's some of my favorite Pokémon Colosseum songs. Overall, the soundtrack contributes significantly to the game's identity, helping to establish Pokémon Colosseum as a bold and atmospheric entry into the series. The music in Pokémon XD Gale of Darkness builds upon the atmospheric foundation laid by Pokémon Colosseum, delivering a soundtrack that is both immersive and thematically rich. Composed once again by Tsukasa Tawada, the music blends orchestral, electronic, and ambient elements to match the game's darker tone and futuristic setting. Each track is crafted to enhance the mood of its environment, from the mysterious hum of cipher bases to the tense energy of shadow Pokemon battles. Notable themes like those accompanying Cipher admins or the ominous presence of Shadow Lugia are layered with intensity and urgency, amplifying the emotional stakes of the story. Here are some of my favorites from Pokémon XD Gale of Darkness. The soundtrack effectively supports the game's cinematic presentation and mature narrative, making it one of the more distinctive musical experiences in the Pokemon series. What did you guys think about the soundtrack? Did you have any favorites? Let me know down below, because I really feel like these OSTs are underrated and they should get more love. Like this man Tawada, he's got talent. In Pokémon Colosseum, players begin the game at a surprisingly high level compared to traditional Pokémon titles, immediately setting a more intense tone. Instead of starting with a single low-level Pokémon, the player begins with a team of Espeon and Umbreon, both already at level 25. This jumpstart reflects the game's more mature atmosphere and faster-paced progression, aligning with the player's role as a skilled former member of the villainous team Snag'em. Beginning at this higher level allows for more complex strategies right from the start, especially with the game's emphasis on double battles. It also shortens the early game grind typically found in mainline titles, allowing players to dive quickly into the heart of the story and the unique Shadow Pokemon mechanics. This unconventional start helps set Colosseum apart as a bold and more challenging entry into the Pokemon series. Level scaling in Pokemon Colosseum is carefully designed to make a consistent challenge throughout the game, reflecting its more structured and linear progression. Unlike traditional Pokemon titles, where players can grind in wild areas or take on routes in various orders, Colosseum features fixed trainer battles and no wild Pokemon, meaning experience is limited to the battles tied directly to the story. As a result, enemy Pokemon levels gradually increase in a controlled manner, encouraging players to develop strategic team compositions and make the most of their available resources. The game also introduces Shadow Pokemon at progressively higher levels, requiring players to purify and train them strategically to keep up. This deliberate level scaling ensures a steady difficulty curve and forces thoughtful gameplay, making each battle feel meaningful and well balanced within the game's unique structure. I actually prefer this level structure for a Pokemon game, and I kinda wish we would see more of that in Pokemon games because sometimes you just don't want to feel like you're starting all over with your baby Pokemon. Sometimes you just want to get right to the action with a team that reaches its potential much more quickly. In my opinion, the endgame grind was a little rough, but it still beats having that feeling like you're starting from scratch. In Pokémon XD Gale of Darkness, however, the game returns to a more traditional starting point by beginning the player at a lower level, creating a slower and more gradual progression compared to its predecessor, Pokémon Colosseum. The protagonist, Michael, starts with an Eevee at level 10, offering a more familiar experience for players used to the mainline Pokémon games. This lower level starting point allows for a smoother learning curve, especially as new gameplay elements such as improved Shadow Pokemon mechanics and purification systems are introduced early on. The slower pace gives players time to build their team and develop strategies before facing tougher opponents, while still maintaining the game's more story-driven and tactical focus. By rebalancing starting levels, Gale of Darkness makes the gameplay more accessible without sacrificing the depth and challenge that define the Orre region adventures. Level scaling in Pokémon XD Gale of Darkness is carefully calibrated to support the game's more gradual and balanced progression, especially compared to the steeper curve seen in Pokémon Colosseum. Players start with lower level Pokémon and enemy levels increase at a measured pace as the story unfolds, allowing for steady team development and giving players time to explore purification mechanics and team building strategies. Because the game lacks wild Pokemon battles, experience is earned solely through trainer encounters and Shadow Pokemon purification, making each battle important for leveling up. The difficulty gradually ramps up, especially during major Cypher encounters and late game battles, requiring players to maintain a well-rounded team. This controlled level scaling helps ensure the game remains challenging without overwhelming the player, striking a balance that supports both newcomers and returning fans of the series. Looking back on my recent playthroughs, however, I wish I waited longer in between games to start XD Gale of Darkness, because having to start with a new team at a lower level was a bit jarring for the early part of my journey, something to keep in mind if someone wants to binge these games back to back. But how did you think levels were handled in these games? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Do you prefer starting over fresh every single time? Or do you prefer starting off with a bit stronger Pokemon to kill less of the grind and focus more on the battles themselves? Let me know in the comments down below. Pokémon Colosseum and Pokémon XD Gale of Darkness are closely linked, sharing the same setting and core mechanics, but they differ significantly in tone, structure, and accessibility. Colosseum presents a darker, edgier experience with a more abrupt start, throwing players into the action with 2 high-level Pokémon and a fast-paced story. Its focus on challenging double battles and limited opportunities for grinding make it feel more intense and strategic. In contrast, Gale of Darkness offers a more refined and approachable experience, starting the player at a lower level and introducing mechanics more gradually. It expands on the Shadow Pokemon concept with improved purification methods and a broader range of Pokemon, making team building more flexible. While Colosseum stands out for its bold, unconventional approach, Gale of Darkness smooths the rough edges and provides a more polished and balanced gameplay experience, making it more accessible to a wider audience while still retaining the core appeal of its predecessor. And I believe these 5 things we've discussed today are more than enough reason why these games can stand alongside the greats and why people should give them a try if they haven't already. So what do you guys think? Did you like these games? Did you hate these games? If you haven't played them, are you willing to give them a try after watching this video? Let me know in the comments down below. The next video I'll be working on is Pokemon Soul Silver, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. And if you're interested, I'll be streaming my revisit of Pokemon Legends Arceus on my streaming channels, and we'll eventually be making a video in the future with my thoughts on that game. But that's all I got for you today. Catch you in the next one. Peace.